Australia.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh,
thank you
for having me on. This is awesome.
Really appreciate it. Now, unfortunately, my emails have decided to delete what I did have sitting there.
Okay.
So why don't you start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, my name is Allard Laban. I'm the Chief Creative Officer for Jackbox Games. I've been with Jackbox probably since the beginning, if you want to count in the Jellyvision years. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, I was working at Berkeley Systems, and we partnered with Jellyvision at that time to make the first You Don't Know Jack.
Yep, that was a good one.
And I was the original art director, so okay. I designed the UI, the Jack Attack, and worked with the team at Jellyvision at that time to ship that product in 1995. So yes, I'm as old as you'd imagine.
Fair enough. No, I do remember playing the original You Don't Know Jack. I think I got it either with like a Pizza Hut promotion or maybe out of a cereal box or something.
We stuck those on everything.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great marketing tool because obviously it really got the game out there. And I mean, as we can see here at PAX,
Yeah, absolutely. It was the beginning of a theme.
Yeah.
Which was like, video games as party vehicles, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think it's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, party game out there. So, how do you go from a small game that's basically giving itself away in cereal boxes to something that people are looking forward to new editions every year?
Well, it's funny because we tried a number of different things. So You Don't Know Jack was pretty popular. I think in the U.S. at least, they sold over 6 million units of the various versions. There was Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4. There was a Volume 5 that came out in 2000. And I actually did a stint at Disney.
Okay.
Because after the first You Don't Know Jack, I went and I worked at Disney for about 5 years. And then my boss at Disney was like, we want to make a game about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, since that TV show was just coming out in the States at that time. And so I called up Jellyvision and was like, can you help me with this project? And it was just so great to work with them again. And when I was quitting Disney, they were like, well, why don't you come and work at Jellyvision? So I jumped ship and moved to Chicago.
Fair enough. So what do you feel when you come to an event like this and you have Jackbox set up and you've got people?
It's so great. I mean, from the first PAX conventions that we went to in the States, we realized this is just perfect, right?
Yeah.
People are either waiting in line, so we have in the States we actually have a cart that has a TV monitor on it and a battery, and we actually let people play the games while they're waiting on lines. We haven't figured out how to do that in Australia in an effective way yet, to ship the cart overseas, but it's still the same community because we usually have a PAX stage at those as well, and it's like family coming together every year. I see the same people that I first met when I came here probably in 2015, 2016, and I'm seeing the same faces, and they're all hanging out and playing games, and it's great. It feels like a nice connection with everybody.
Yeah. No, you do usually see, I mean, I've only been coming here since I think 2019.
Okay.
And you do see, even I see a lot of familiar faces, even with the gap for the time frame that shall not be named. And
yes, exactly.
And you do see a lot of familiar faces, and it's always good to come through the hallway here and see so many people. And I remember there's been years where you've had people just standing in the background because everything in there is completely full.
Right.
And everyone's just joining in, and you've got your audience team members, but then you've also got your people that are actually playing, and it's awesome to watch.
Yeah. No, it's also, the stage show is also really fabulous too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when we've actually had big fails as well. I think one of the first stage shows that we did here, like all of a sudden all the Wi-Fi went out, and we had to kind of manually dial people in on their own phones and whatnot. But people are really patient with us and really great about it. And I don't know, we've gotten better at some of the back end tech stuff that keeps that kind of stuff from happening anymore. But it's such a welcoming community here. I can't imagine us not ever coming to PAX again. Because it's so much fun, and it's a long flight for a lot of us, but it's totally worth it.
So how do you go with the jet lag coming over from the States?
I'm totally whacked out right now.
Okay.
It's amazing how you can do without a lot of sleep. But
yeah,
I actually came from Copenhagen because my wife works in Sweden, so I spent a few months there every year. So flew from Europe, and I thought it might be better, but it's actually worse, jet lag wise.
So have you got any advice for people that might be listening in terms of if they want to get into game development and that sort of thing? Have you got any advice you could give people for that? Or
Yeah, I think one way of getting into game development is modding stuff. Mm-hmm. Really, we've hired people who've modded our games in the past because they've just been so into it. That they kind of gotten into the guts of how we make things, and they understand how we make things. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a path. Just making your own games. The tools are available now that anyone can kind of get in there and start building it themselves. There's a lot of ways to generate art if you need to generate art, or ways to generate code if you need to generate code. So it's all about kind of getting to that. The simplest concept, but you want to have a sort of an execution that brings the best user experience as well. So keep it simple,
Yeah.
But that's kind of the advice that we usually give up and coming developers and game artists. It's just make a game.
Yep. Fair enough. I guess that's the only way you're going to do it is do it, really, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely. A lot of us who are started out in the business a long time ago, there weren't programs at colleges for that. There was no game design schools, or there's a lot of that now. But even with those types of educations, everyone's looking at your portfolio, looking at the games you've made and the choices you've made, and how you build your games out. So
and from a creative standpoint, have you got anything that you'd sort of encourage budding artists or anything like that in terms of getting into games design if they wanted to, or at least doing the art for games?
So I look at a lot of portfolios, and for Jackbox we look at kind of a broad range of skills because it's kind of a hybrid experience. We need people who can be good graphic designers as well as good illustrators, people who can do different styles of illustration. But then if you look at our staff, we kind of embrace people's own personal style. So if you have a strong personal style, that's also a plus.
Yeah.
I think the big trick is to kind of balance that artistic vision with a good technical know-how too, because there's a lot of fiddly stuff that you have to kind of get into to build game art. It's not just about making things look pretty. You need to get in there and make things efficient and optimized for good gameplay, because even with these high-powered machines, if your game is running slow, that's no fun.
Yeah, no, exactly. So one of the things that I've always noticed about the Jackbox games, and you don't know, Jack, is you've got a lot of different, I guess, not only themes in terms of the types of games that people play, but then you've also obviously got your different art styles, which you just touched on. You've got your different, I guess, your different versions of humor in them as well. How do you go about matching the humor and the art style with the game that people are playing as well?
That's a good question. I think because our games could be all very similar, we consciously chose to be very eclectic, because every game is kind of an opportunity to kind of make a new brand,
Yeah.
Even if it's sort of we could make anything we want, it's within our power to sort of create these mini little worlds, these mini little brands around a game, because you never know if a game takes off, like say Trivia Murder Party or Quiplash.
Yep.
That style is going to stick with us. You want to be able to have something that you can kind of hang your hat on. An example is sort of Fibbage. When we first did Fibbage, it was more of an experiment in terms of how can we get phones as controllers, whatnot, and the style was like decent for the game, but it wasn't such a recognizable signature style. It'd be like, oh, that's Fibbage. So it took us a few iterations of Fibbage to kind of get to some vibes that really worked for it as a brand. So I think when it comes to the humor and the art, we always have sort of a wrapper or a concept. It could be a non-rapper is a rapper, but sometimes it's fun to just sort of have a world and have little creatures that exist in it. We do have sort of functional things like people need to have a meeple or something that represents themselves on screen or avatar. So what's that going to be? What are the choices that we're going to make? And sometimes having sort of a defined world or wrapper helps us make those choices easier.
Yeah.
So, with Quiplash, it was kind of an abstracted world, but it was about humor. So we wanted to have like little happy, little laughing characters, because we wanted to show when we thought something was funny. So
Yeah.
So that was kind of the driving force behind that design.
Okay.
We have an interesting world because it's not like your traditional game design where you're, building out an environment that you have to navigate with a character. We're really building a presentation layer. It's like something that the design of the font and all that stuff is super legible, not confusing. You need to be able to look at the screen and look at your phone and understand the relationship right away.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of editing that goes into sort of designing that experience. And so you want to have the world, the vibes, the humor, the characters if it needs them, and somehow it all kind of comes together.
Yeah.
And our teams are relatively small, so a team would be an artist, a lead artist, maybe an additional artist to help do animation, a developer, a front-end developer, and audio design, which is huge for us as well, because the voice is so important, as well as whatever happens on screen needs to have a sound effect.
Yep. So has it always been, here's a world, or here's a game, now we need to put it into a world? Or have there been times where you've had an idea for a world and you're like, oh, what game are we going to put this up against?
So, sometimes it's sort of self-evident. Like in the case of Trivia Murder Party, we knew that it was a dark kind of theme.
Yep.
And so once we made the choice of having the avatars be little voodoo dolls, then it started to sort of write itself in terms of like how we would design the world around that and how we would kill them off,
Yeah.
But something like, what was the tricky one? Guess-Me-Nows was a tricky one, because there was sort of a polling game, and so we had to have sort of a high-level idea of, well, how are we getting this information? Maybe if it's like people spying on you and getting this information, that's how we're doing it. So it's sort of like we did that with a lot of surveillance cameras and stuff like that. That's like a little over the top, but back then that was kind of funny. Now it's not so funny anymore.
So have you got anything that you're working on at the moment in terms of anything that people can look forward to in a new edition, or?
So yeah, I mean, we're about to release the Jackbox Survey Scramble, speaking of survey games, and it's a new take on survey games, and it's really, I don't know, we're pretty proud of it because it's like taking a simple concept, but we've come up with a lot of different iterative design within the game of how we actually look at the surveys. And they're everything from a game called Pong, it's called Bounce, but it's a lot like Pong, where you're using survey data to kind of battle against each other. It's sort of a handball kind of metaphor. And also we have a tic-tac-toe version of that, but also just a simple pick the highest on the list or the lowest on the list
Yeah.
based on where it is. So that game's coming out. And for next year, we're actually iterating right now on new games
Okay.
that will be, showing up on schedule for next year, hopefully. And we have some other things that we're experimenting with in terms of a new pipeline.
Yeah.
So a new graphical pipeline and design pipeline. So
there's definitely a lot of stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, we haven't slowed down.
Yeah.
But we're still trying to keep the team pretty tight. We're not expanding a lot. We're trying to keep everything doable.
Yeah.
And also sort of balance our work-life stuff as well.
Yeah, you definitely need to have a good work-life balance.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it's all good.
Okay. And then just one last question. How do you go about picking what games are going to be within an edition? Do you sort of think, okay, these games are similar, so we'll combine them, or do we...
So we, around this time of year, and it's my favorite time of year, is we do game jams.
Okay.
And this year, we actually did a game jam, and we're going to probably do a couple more before we've decided exactly what all the games are going to be. But it's been really successful so far. But this time of year, people get together, small groups of people, prototype, design, iterate, and then they pitch them in a pitch process. And we have a number of people in our green light committee that review, play, discuss, and make suggestions. If it's a game that's pretty ready to go, we'll green light it.
Yep.
If it's a game that's maybe not ready just yet, we'll yellow light it and give suggestions on how to get it to a green light. But never, it's not too explicit. Like we just kind of sort of set the goals and let the team sort of figure out how to solve the problems. And then if it's a game that just either there's a game that's similar in the pack or whatnot, it'll get a red light. But no red light game has ever really died. So a number of games have come back year after year and have changed enough that we've ended up greenlighting them. Trivia Murder Party is an example of that.
Yeah.
Faking It is an example of that. Games that had to go through a couple of years of iteration before we greenlit it. But every year we're generating 20 to 30 new game ideas. So.
Okay.
So we have a lot to work with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to answer the questions.
No problem.
I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.
Otherwise, enjoy your time in Melbourne. Enjoy your time at PAX. Don't forget to obviously hydrate and everything, but make sure you get a chance to go and wander around and check some other stuff out as well.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite show actually.
Yeah.
I love all the indie stuff here. Is amazing. So
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing all that.
Yeah, awesome. Fantastic.
Once I get away from this.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time
Cheers,
today.
man. Cheers.